Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. Southern Regional Center covers 14 counties in southwest Wisconsin, but due to technology, we have friends that join us from all over the state, and sometimes we even let people from Minnesota in, but we try not to, but they sneak by. Just feeling a little not Minnesota happy today for some reason. I don't know why. But we are here to talk about some awesome changes that have taken place in the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver. We're going to explain a little bit what that is, but I'd like to introduce Jess and Beth, and they are going to take us through some introduction, and then I've got a couple of questions for them, and then we'll open it up to questions for all of you. So Beth and Jess, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we'll pull up. It's just a couple slides just to kind of do some level setting and explain a little bit about why we're here and what's going on with the CLTS waiver program. So I will pull that up here really quick and then we can get rolling. All right, are people able to see the full PowerPoint?
We are seeing the preview.
Seeing the
presenter. We're seeing the presenter view.
How about now?
Now we see the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Well done.
It's always so weird to figure out when you can't see what everyone else sees. All right. So we will get started here. So the CLTS waiver program provides community-based supports and services from birth through age 21 for children with long-term support needs. Children in the CLTS program include those with developmental, physical, and or mental health disabilities. And the goal of the program is to work with families to help children live in and be a part of their homes and communities in order to work towards our vision of children living their best possible life now and into the future. There are over 14,000 children enrolled in the CLTS program, and our numbers continue to grow. So DHS recently renewed our waiver and to continue operating and make changes to the CLTS waiver program. So kind of thinking about what is a waiver renewal. A waiver allows Medicaid to fund additional services and supports that are not covered under the regular Medicaid program, which you typically think of as your kind of traditional healthcare services. So these additional services and supports go above and beyond what traditional Medicaid can cover in order to help children with long-term support needs stay in their homes and communities. So to be able to fund these additional services and supports, DHS has to submit a waiver application every 5 years to the federal government that outlines the details of the program, what types of services and supports we'd like to offer, and then that approval from the federal government allows us to fund services that help children with disabilities to stay in their homes and communities. We started this work preparing for our waiver renewal over a year and a half ago and did a lot of feedback collection efforts with providers, families, counties, and other stakeholders. The waiver that we were previously operating our program under expired at the end of December, and our new waiver that was approved by the federal government took effect on January 1st. So each waiver lasts 5 years before you have to renew it again with the federal government. And so this really gave us the opportunity to make changes to our program and add new services to better support children and families in our program. Although this waiver did become technically effective on January 1st, at the state and county levels, we're still working really hard to fully implement these changes. It will take time to fully operationalize all of these changes. For context, we got our approval from the federal government in mid-December, so that's not a ton of turnaround time before January 1st to prepare all of the policy, communications, and systems changes that fast. So maybe a while kind of before families are really able to feel and benefit from these changes. At the outset of the work, we set our guiding pillars of access, eligibility, family focus, and inclusion to really kind of ground us in the type of waiver that we wanted to create and submit, which you've seen in previous probably CLTS communications. And we've carried these pillars throughout our time brainstorming, developing, writing, and implementing this waiver. So we hope kind of as Beth walks you through some of the service package changes and we have continued conversations about this waiver renewal, you'll be able to see kind of how these guiding pillars are infused throughout our service and program as a whole. So I'll turn it over to Beth now to walk through a couple of the exciting service changes.
As you move forward, Jess, this is my problem. I forgot to properly introduce you and your roles at DHS and who you work for. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that, I totally forgot to do that. Thank you.
Also should have done that. So I'm Jessica Holland. I'm a program and policy analyst in the Bureau of Children's Services in DHS. And then I'll let Beth introduce herself.
Yeah, and my name is Beth Gullickson. My title is called a Children and Family Program Specialist. So I work primarily with county waiver agencies, also with families and providers, but mainly with county waiver agencies regarding how they operationalize the CLTS program at their county level. So I do think I want to pause just for a second to see if there were any questions about any of the information that Jessica went through before I get into kind of a summary of the newer services that we're offering in our waiver. I don't see any yet. Okay, so go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just the only thing, and I apologize because I was also trying to take attendance at the same time. But I know you mentioned that you got a lot of input, but then I think I might have gone to, check somebody in or track somebody down. What different ways do you get input into this waiver? Who do you ask? Who's allowed to give input? How is this formed?
Yeah, so it was really it launched July of 2020. So that's how long we've been formally externally working on this waiver. And we seek input from a variety of stakeholders. So we have the Children's Long-Term Support Council that we use a lot as an advisory council, and they really helps provide a lot of great input to shape kind of the direction of this waiver. We talk to county waiver agencies all the way kind of from your support and service coordination level to kind of like higher up at the county at kind of the director's level. We surveyed families and held 3 input sessions in October of 2020. There was 3 virtual input sessions where families were able to talk in a forum like this on Zoom about their feedback. What would they like to see? What do they need? Where are those pain points? And so those were a lot of the feedback. And we also invited providers to share their feedback as well. So it was very extensive. We talked to various other state agencies and other divisions within the department as well, of where can we really increase services and supports and really kind of live out those guiding pillars. So it took a lot of effort and a lot of feedback was provided. And you can see in the development of these, particularly the services, that really was because of the feedback that we received, especially from families about where their needs were and where there were gaps in the program where CLTS could kind of step in and support families in new ways.
Thanks.
Great. So I will I'll give a brief overview of some of these new services that were included in the waiver renewal. We won't go really deep into the ins and outs of these services, but what I hope is that the information provided today can help families who are listening today just have a jumping off point to talk to their support and service coordinator about how these services might help you and your family if you're currently participating in the CLTS program. If you're not currently participating in the program, maybe it'll give you some ideas of, is this program a good fit for me or my family? So we can just get right into it. We do have 7 new services that we're really excited about. First is discovery and career planning. CLTS has historically offered and still does a similar service called supported employment. But with this new service of discovering career planning, we really wanted to expand more age-appropriate opportunities for career planning for children and youth, understanding that children and youth are often in a phase where they're exploring their interests and skills. So for example, a child or youth who is interested in maybe becoming a chef or a fashion designer, are there opportunities in the community that are available, like classes or camps that could help advance some of those skills or allow them to discover what that career path might look like or if it's right for them. So it's really intended to kind of expand children and youth horizons when it comes to what they could do as a career, right? So really age appropriate ways to do that. The next service is grief and bereavement counseling. So unfortunately, some children and youth in the CLTS programs are sometimes diagnosed with terminal conditions or pass due to their complex medical conditions, or sometimes also pass unexpectedly. And so this service is intended to help provide expanded access to grief and bereavement counseling and resources to the participant who's dealing with a terminal illness and the family to help cope with that child's terminal diagnosis or the passing of their child or youth. So the intent here also is that families can pursue grief services and resources from providers that maybe aren't otherwise covered by insurance companies. So providers like spiritual counselors, for example. So we really wanted to think holistically and be family focused with the service and the ways that families can choose to pursue that grief and bereavement support in many different ways. The next service is health and wellness. So with this service, we really wanted to promote healthy living and lifestyles for CLTS participants. We wanted to help create additional opportunities for community inclusion with those activities as well. So think about those activities that a child or a youth might like to participate in. So for example, do they enjoy yoga, meditation? I might be dating myself when I say Zumba classes, but do they like some of those things that help keep them active and healthy in the community? So those are some of the examples that could be pursued with that health and wellness service. The next one, participant and family directed goods and services. This service is really meant to help families address those long-term care needs in a really flexible way. So if there's an item or a service that might really help address some of those long-term care needs that the family or participant has, but maybe doesn't quite fit nicely into another service category, they might be able to be covered under this service. I know that's like a really smushy kind of definition. Because this is a really new service, we may not have like really specific examples, right? So it might be important if you're thinking of, if you're a family who's listening today and you're thinking of this one thing that would really help advance some of your long-term care goals and needs, talk to your support and service coordinator, and if we're kind of running into difficulties with flexibilities, maybe consider something under this service category. The next one is participant and family direction broker services. So I really like to think of this service as kind of the family's human resource department. So if as a family you have caregivers in the home that you've hired through what we call a fiscal management agency, for example, you as the family are the managers of those workers. The FMS agency might review the workers' timesheets and process their paychecks. And the broker service is really meant to help families with those other tasks of being their own manager. So things like recruitment of providers, managing schedules,
Hopefully we haven't lost everyone, and hopefully they will be able to reconnect in just a moment. There we go. Okay, we lost you there for a second, Beth.
Oh, geez.
I know, right?
All right.
So you had
Let's
started
see.
talking about participant and family direction broker services.
Yes.
and timesheets, I think was one of the last things I heard.
Timesheets. Okay. So I think I was kind of comparing this service to a human resource type of resource for a family, right? So if you as a family have workers who are hired through a fiscal management agency, that fiscal management agency would help with verifying timesheets, for example, or processing paychecks. The broker service is really meant to help with those other tasks of the family being their own manager of those services. So things like recruitment of providers, managing schedules, helping with training of workers, or maybe even support when you need to discipline a worker. So I really tend to think of this service as kind of that human resource component, like what would I go to my HR department for, right? That's really kind of the service that the broker service is trying to address. The next one is safety planning and prevention. So this service is meant to help families with developing a safety plan. So whether it's, safety regarding some challenging behaviors that they're experiencing, or safety when it comes to maybe natural disasters. So if a CLTS participant maybe has some of those challenging behaviors, the service might be able to assist with getting a professional to help develop a plan to keep everyone safe. Or help training to resolve some of those issues safely. Also, if a participant may have some physical disabilities, this service could possibly help a family plan for what to do in case of a natural disaster. So helping to identify what are those safe places in the home. Are there other things that might be needed to maybe help someone who's in a wheelchair get down the stairs, for example. Another service, or I guess the last new service is virtual equipment and supports. So this service is intended to cover the hardware or software that's required in order to access a CLTS service remotely. So for example, let's say a family is located in a more rural area, and your child or youth might benefit from something like music therapy, but you may not have a music therapist in your area. This service would or could help you get something like a tablet, for example, so that the participant can still engage in that service remotely. So that's really a brief overview of these new services. I'm going to stop and see if you guys have questions.
This is where being the host, it's so cool because I get to ask my questions first, which is just probably not nice of me. So I have some particular questions, ones that weren't in, beforehand, but I'm curious overall, when you're talking like the grief and bereavement counseling, health and wellness, safety planning and prevention, does a family have to go and find their own safety planner? Are there going to be resources available through CLTS? If the family finds someone, do they need to then register with CLTS? So it's this whole question of, okay, is there going to be an approved list of grief and bereavement counselors, or do I find my own, or do you suggest some? Or have we figured that out yet, as it's only February?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And yes, I think one of the answers to your question is yes, we are still figuring that out as it's February and this is a newer waiver renewal, right? We did publish some recruitment materials for providers. You guys freeze up on me again. Hold on.
Yeah, but you're back right around publish some
frozen?
materials.
I'm back now. Okay. Sorry about that. And I'm sorry, my dog is going a little crazy right now, if you guys can hear that in the background. So we do have some new publications specifically for provider recruitment. So that is one thing as we get into the new waiver renewal. We will have a phase where, we might need to recruit additional providers, right? So a provider might not be ready right away. Sorry, my internet is still telling me that I'm unstable. Hopefully you guys can still hear me.
You are still good.
Okay.
Don't listen to that nasty internet.
Okay. So yes, I think there will be a time frame where there might not be a whole lot of providers available, and it may take a team effort to try to recruit those providers. Hopefully in the future we'll get to a point where we have providers listed on our registry and directory, so that families can have access to those providers. Generally speaking, as a CLTS program, we do generally require that providers who are agencies or what we call sole proprietors, so individuals who may be in business for themselves, are do go through that registration process and are visible publicly in our registry and directory. An exception to some of those rules is one, if you have what we call an individual provider. So those are providers that maybe as a family, you have a friend or another family member or someone else that that you would like to become your caregiver for your child or youth in your family. Those providers can be hired through what we call fiscal management agencies. And those specific caregivers, those what we call family directed caregivers or individual providers, don't need to register because they would be connected through that fiscal management. So hopefully that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, and like I said, I know very well that we are early on in the process, so I know that we don't have everything developed quite yet. With the discovery and career planning, is CLTS working with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation with that, or is this going to be separate from DVR or a joint effort with DVR?
I think the answer to that is yes and yes. So
sure.
Yes, we do. We definitely do encourage participants who are eligible for DVR services to pursue those services with DVR. As with your support and service coordinator, we do kind of expect that coordination to occur with that DVR service if you're eligible and have that opportunity available to you. And also, yes, the services is intended to create additional opportunities for participants. So if there is something that would kind of help in that area, help in that discovery and career planning area that maybe isn't covered with DVR or maybe is separate from those services that you're getting from DVR, this could expand those opportunities. Yeah.
I love that all these new services are still following along the lines of the goal orientation. What is it that you are trying to accomplish? What is it? What is the goal of the child? What is the goal of the family? What is the needs of the family? So I just really like the fact that, even with the new services, it's continuing that focus on outcomes, even though it's a weird word to use. We don't use it a lot in our families, but this whole sense of at the end of the day, what is this going to result? How is this going to make life better? Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everything is really family or participant specific, right? And so I think that's what makes it difficult, especially with these newer services, to give really tangible examples, because everything is intended to be really catered and specific to that participant. With these newer services, we may not have all those examples right now, right? Because we're still exploring and learning together about what types of things could be covered. So, yeah.
And I, totally open up. We're going to stop if you guys wouldn't mind. Do you have any other slides? Or are we done with slides?
I think we do have another slide just about some renamed services.
That was my next question. I know that part of the outcome was renaming the services to be more family-friendly service names and descriptions. And while as a parent, I know that some portions of the government aren't exactly known for calling things what they are or making it understandable for those of us not working in government. So if you want to go through some of the renamed services, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, we definitely tried to approach the renaming of services with a family-friendly lens to try to kind of make them more attainable, more kind of understandable. So we the first rename service was consumer education and training. The new service being empowerment and self-determination support. So really focusing on what the ultimate goal of that service is. And the goal of that service is really to empower that participant to realize their specific skills, their abilities, and to really help manage their services. So so that was the renaming there. Housing counseling, probably kind of a smaller shift in renaming. So housing support services. I think we tried to kind of umbrella some of all the housing support services that we offered through the waiver under this service, and not specifically just housing counseling. So trying to expand the name of that service. And then the two other ones, supported employment, both individual and small group, we changed that name to community competitive integrated employment. So really trying to focus in on that community inclusion type of goal with the employment services, that we want our participants to have that competitive integrated employment opportunities to be supported with this service. Supportive home care, we changed to personal supports. I think we went around and around about this renaming of this service to try to find something that generally fit this service. I think the historic name, caused some confusion just in terms of the scope of what could be included in this service. And so we really wanted to change the name to, again, be kind of more holistic in terms of what the intent of the service is. And then the next one, training for parents and guardians and families of children with disabilities. It's a really long name. We tried to change it also to kind of consolidate the name, but also to facilitate kind of that holistic view of the service. So changing it to family unpaid caregiver supports and services. So that's just a general orientation of some of the name changes. Generally speaking, the content of those services haven't changed a whole lot. We've just kind of tried to rename those services to be more family friendly. So.
And I really like the inclusion of the words competitive integrative employment. I mean, that is the current term that we're seeing throughout the employment industry. So that brings it very much in line with what families are going to be hearing from other departments. And so that's really cool. Yeah. Now, I know you also had some changes in youth transitioning from CLTS. And do you want to briefly go over those?
Sure. So I would say the main changes that we included in our waiver renewal. One is a requirement that support and service coordinators in the CLTS program would be required to send a referral to the ADRCs, so the adult long-term care programs at age 17 and 6 months. So that is a requirement of the program, as well as starting those transitional conversations at an earlier time. So at the age of 14, really demonstrating that they've had those conversations with families about specific transitional needs. So whether it's education about supported decision-making, or if a guardianship might be required in their specific family, what that means, kind of helping facilitate some of those issues or questions. Also education about the adult long-term care system in general, and how that transition works, transitioning their health care, all those types of conversations I think one of the biggest drivers of that change was some feedback from families, and that, feeling like they're kind of being rushed. I don't want to say rushed out the door, but really not feeling prepared for that transition to the adult long-term care program. Understandably, it's a huge change for a family to go through, right? So having those conversations early is really kind of in the best interest of the family, right? So.
Oh, and that brings it again, just bringing in line with the school starting their transition services at 14, and that, that whole idea of there's skills that we can build. Same with the healthcare system, wanting to begin those transition conversations. So it really looks like this is an attempt to like help integrate the whole transition experience for the families that utilize the children's long-term support waivers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you hit a nail on the head.
I try. I do my best. I am going to just unpin you really quick so that I can see everybody else. And go to gallery view and then open it up for any questions in the chat, or if you unmute, I will be able to hopefully see that and call on you. So if that's okay with Jess and Beth, are you open for questions?
Definitely. Yeah.
Great. I mean, I know I asked phenomenal questions and covered almost everything that was on everybody's mind. I get that. But please feel free to, ask any sort of clarifying questions or whatever you might have on your mind today. And you can put them in the chat or you can unmute. Heidi.
Hi, I have two quick questions for you, actually. One is, I'm assuming there haven't been any changes to the eligibility process for, for families for determining eligibility. Is that correct?
Generally speaking, yes. So,
Okay.
So we haven't had any major changes in the eligibility criteria or the process for that. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then this is a really specific question regarding the health and wellness that you described. I was wondering, would something like a child's participation fees for like a recreational sports team or for like an aid to assist a child in such a sports team, would that be something that would be possibly be considered under that?
I think it's possible. And I think, bringing up those type of ideas or questions to the support and service coordinator to talk through, what pieces of that puzzle would fit under health and wellness. There might be a piece that might fit somewhere else,
Okay.
So yeah, but, fees for classes and other kind of health and wellness activities could potentially be paid for with that service. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
We do have a question in the chat about how are these new descriptions being given to the support and service coordinators, and are they expected to preemptively let families know that there are these new and different services, or how is that going to be communicated?
That's a good question. So yesterday we actually had our teleconference with county waiver agencies. So they were actually just introduced to a lot of this information yesterday. So as Jessica kind of mentioned at the beginning, we may need to give counties a little bit of time to digest and figure out what to do next. But generally, I think what we would expect is, at those natural touch points that you have with your support and service coordinator, that some of those issues do get discussed, right? So checking in with you about your services, that's a good kind of natural touch point to start some of these conversations. And maybe at your 6-month review, your annual review, or maybe your support and service coordinator has some more timely kind of conversations with you, whether it's once every 3 months or every month. So yeah, we definitely do expect support and service coordinators to touch base with families on a regular basis, and then this would kind of be woven into that conversation.
Thanks. And I just want to reflect a moment on Heidi's question, as I love the fact that that is, very much pointed toward inclusion in the community. And what can the waiver do to help support our families to be more included in the community around them? Because that's, one of our goals. So thanks, Heidi. That was a great point. Other questions? I love the fact you can all watch me scan the different names on the rows. Makes me feel very watched. All right then, Beth, Jess, any final comments or words or suggestions for people that are working with families as you guys implement these changes and the whole state implements these changes? Besides, please be patient and kind to your supported service coordinators.
Yeah, I think that would be a big one. I think also some resources that we have, definitely check out our the website. I think you posted that in the chat. So definitely check out our website. And if you're here today on this webinar, I'm assuming, you have access to internet, so you can kind of click on that and find out more information on that website. We do have some publications specifically for families that we're planning on publishing. So an All In for Kids bulletin, I think, comes out quarterly. And then we are updating what's called our services at a glance document. So that's not completely up to date yet, but it should be up to date soon with some of those services. So, so stay tuned for that resource as well.
And if anybody does not already receive the All In for Kids bulletin, as I do try to keep connected with that and any other changes, and you are very free to join the listserv for Southern Regional Center. Matter of fact, if you didn't opt out in your registration, you will automatically be added. If you did opt out and you've changed your mind, please let me know. It only comes out weekly, and we try to include when that bulletin comes out and when Bird to Three's bulletin comes out, so that people are aware of it and more families can get to that information. I just want to thank you guys so much for taking time out. I know there's a lot been going on in the beginning of this year and trying to implement these changes, but I really like the focus on family and community involvement. And so I appreciate your time. And if you put your name and email address, I will gladly get you hooked up in listserv. But Beth and Jess, thank you so much for being here. Hope you guys had a chance to come back and listen to some other conversations as well. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.